Welcome back and hello. This is the fourth video in a series of videos about how to use centrifuges in the community. As a quick recap, in the first video we went through the principles and the components of one. In the second video we walked through actually centrifuging some samples, some blood samples, and showing you how the centrifuge would separate the components of the blood, the red cells and the white cells, from the serum. In the third video, we walked through the processes that we think you will use your centrifuge for in between collecting of the blood samples and sending them to the laboratory, and how we expect them to be transported to us. So today we're going to cover off the remaining parts, which will be about contacting us if you have an incident or want some help with some information. We're going to cover off some daily checks. We're going to cover off weekly maintenance. We're going to cover off what you do if a sample breaks in the centrifuge, and some general troubleshooting. So let's get started. So first of all, contacting us. We will supply a folder. It will be electronic. It will be available on NHS Futures. And inside of that, so you'll be able to, it's cloud-based, so you'll be able to access it from any PC. You will have training records. You can keep your maintenance logs in there. It will contain a copy of the user manual. It will contain SOPs, which is all the information that I'm summarizing in these videos. And it will have some contact information. And the two places that you will need to contact us are through general pathology queries, who are aware of the centrifuge that are deployed. And if you take a centrifuge out of use or have any questions, that's your first point of contact with us. And the actual email address is available on our website, and it will also be available in the NHS Futures folder. The second point of contact is with the service provider for the centrifuge, which is Henderson Biomedical. They are the engineers that will service the centrifuge for you and calibrate it. So again, if you believe there is a technical issue or you're not happy with the centrifuge, you can take it out of use, report it to us that you're not using it, and also ring Henderson and get them to arrange an engineer to come out and just check the centrifuge over for you. So that is contacting us and where these documents are held. So let's go into the daily checklist. Not a lot to do. It's just visual checks really, and making sure that you're happy with the centrifuge before you start work. I imagine you already have a daily checklist within your work area, something like checking the barcode label printers, checking you've got all your blood tubes and your venipuncture kits, checking you've got a computer and the area is clean. Now, all you need to do is add the centrifuge to that. It is an important tool that will help reduce the amount of rebleeds and help with the accuracy of results. So it's important that you add that to that checklist and just do some daily checks. So let's go through those daily checks. Firstly, make sure there's power and that the centrifuge is switched on. Make sure the settings are correct, that it's set at 3000 RPM and the spin cycle is for 10 minutes. Check all the components are there so that you've got your adapters, the buckets rotate, there's no debris in the rotor, and that you have your 4 BioSeal lids. Just check for wear and tear, that there's no damage to the seal, the lid is working, and that the rotor, that there's no cracks or signs of wear. It does generate a lot of force, so the rotor can over time become fatigued and generate cracks. If you're not happy, there are cracks or it does show signs of fatigue or it doesn't seem to be working properly, take the centrifuge out of use, report it to Henderson and report it to ourselves. Like I said, Henderson will come out once a year and they will check all these components for you and calibrate. And that is it. That is the daily checklist. If the centrifuge needs cleaning at any point, you can do that with surface disinfection using 70% alcohol. And we're going to go through that now. So then in terms of weekly maintenance, the only maintenance that you need to do is a surface disinfection. Just like your other clinical areas, you want to keep it as clinically safe as possible. To use that, we use 70% alcohol wipes. They're available on NHS on the NHS supply chain, and you're probably using them in other clinical areas. It's just a surface wipe. The centrifuge has got electricity in it, so it can generate a spark, and alcohol is flammable, so you don't want to be sloshing around lots of alcohol. So it's just a surface disinfection of all the areas. I'm going to summarize it today. I'm working one-handed with my phone, so I will just show you some of the areas, but expect you to clean it in a much more comprehensive way, and this should be done weekly. So first of all, like I said, we need to turn the centrifuge off. There is a switch at the back, and you can switch the power off, and after a couple of seconds the electricity will be removed from the device. It's now safe to do the surface disinfection. preparation of this, I have actually opened some before. So these are the 70% alcohol wipes that we're using. We remove them. We remove the brackets. You can wipe the outside of the brackets, handles, and you can even get the wipes into the actual sample containers. Use multiple wipes to then clean the outside of the buckets, clean the inside of the buckets, and also to clean the drum and check for debris while you're doing it. Then use further wipes to wipe down the areas that you touch on the front of the instrument and the lid. So it's surface disinfection, 70% alcohol, allow for 10 minutes to dry, and then you can turn your centrifuge back on. So that is your weekly maintenance, which is cleaning or surface disinfection. Okay, so next, what to do in the unlikely event that a sample should break in a bucket during centrifugation. Something that happens very infrequently if you use the centrifuge correctly. And I think the first thing that we have stressed throughout these videos is always use the biolid seals. They will contain a break to that one particular bucket and reduce the amount of blood that is splattered up and creating an aerosol. So like I said, it's critical, and the centrifuge should only be used when you have got the biolids in place. So let's put them on the centrifuge. So the first time you probably realise you actually have a broken sample is at the end of the cycle. There may be a noise during the centrifugation, you may not. But where after the cycle has come to a stop and you've opened the lid, you'll notice that there's probably blood stains on one of the bioseal lids, and it's probably quite apparent that one of the samples inside has actually broken. And at which point you realise, okay, I've got a breakage. What do I do? So because you've used the bioseal lids, the break will be contained to a single bucket. The affected bucket can be removed, put to one side, put a piece of paper beside it saying broken sample and a time on it, leave for 30 minutes. And then you can work through your day in terms of your blood collection times when you're going to have time to deal with the break. The rest of the buckets will be unaffected, so you can take the lids off and process the samples as normal. Okay, so you get a quiet moment, you're going to deal with the breakage. So what do I do? So the first thing you need to do is make sure, have you got a spill kit? Have you got some forceps? Have you got some 70% alcohol wipes? Have I got a bucket? And have I got some Virkon? So you're going to have to decontaminate the bucket and the brackets and the lid with 1% Virkon. So to do that, and ahead of this, you're going to need to get a bucket. I've got a clean bio bin, but you may have a slightly more appropriate bucket. And you're going to make up a sufficient quantity of water to immerse the bucket, the carrier and the lid in it and leave it for 30 minutes. So to make up the right amount of volume, you can either make 1% Virkon, really easy to use. It's available on NHS supply chain. You follow the instructions on the back, which tells you how many tablets and how much more water to make 1% Virkon. It's got the relevant health and safety information on it because it's quite powerful decontaminant, so please use the right equipment. And while I'm on that, you should be wearing an apron and you should be wearing gloves. So make that up, get your Virkon ready, make sure you've got some forceps and you've got some 70% alcohol wipes. You then take your bucket with your broken samples. I have to put the phone down. You remove the lid. Hopefully I can get that off with one hand. That goes into the Virkon. You can actually surface clean it first of all with some tissue or things from your spill kit if there's lots of blood, and that then goes into the sharps bin. And once the majority of the blood's off, the lid goes into the 1% Virkon solution. You remove any samples that are not broken, being careful to avoid anything that may be broken. All our tubes are now plastic, so they're not glass, which is a good thing. So you can remove the ones that are still usable. They can be wiped down with 70% alcohol to be disinfected, and they can be sent to the laboratory. please put them in a separate bag with a little note saying that you've had to disinfect them due to a breakage in the centrifuge, and we will deal with them there. We'll read the information and get those samples processed, but the idea is to get as many of the samples in the bucket processed as possible. So remove the samples that haven't been broken, clean them in 70% alcohol, get them off to the laboratory with a note in a separate bag. You're left with the broken sample. Take your forceps, remove the broken bits that you can and place them in a sharps bin. If you can read the label, get the information of the label about the patient details, go and then write that down or record it on your phone, and then you can report that to us after you finish cleaning. After that, you've removed all the sharps bits. You can take your bracket out. If it's safe to do so, you can wipe it down with a tissue before placing the bracket into your 1% Virkon solution. Check your bucket. Again, if you need to give that a wipe with a tissue, making sure there's no bits of plastic or anything in it, you can do that. Or alternatively, place it straight into your 1% Virkon. Leave them in there for half an hour. You can remove your dirty gloves. At this point, then you can go onto the NHS portal, report an incident, give us the details of the patient where the sample broke. We will send out a report saying unable to process. That will then trigger the patient to be recalled and have new samples taken. So we will get that patient back and get them some results. Once the adapter, bucket and lid have been in the Virkon for half an hour, you can remove them, you can surface dry them with a tissue, and you can rebuild the centrifuge, which I've shown you in previous videos. But the bucket sits in the rotor, make sure it can swing. The adapter needs to be dried inside and out, and biolid will need to be dried. And that is how you deal with a broken sample. And like I said, it happens very infrequently if the centrifuge is used properly. Right, final point, again that is useful to know, is what happens if the lid won't open and my samples are stuck in the centrifuge. Okay, within a drawer somewhere nearby or being delivered with your centrifuge will be a centrifuge key. Now this will manually override the lid. The lid has a safety feature which won't allow it to open in operation. So you need to be, before you manually open a centrifuge, absolutely certain that the centrifuge is not spinning, because it will override this. So the best way to do is ensure that the cycle is finished. I can't open the lid for some reason, it seems to be stuck. Just to make sure though, I will turn the power off. And I will leave the centrifuge for 10 minutes to make sure anything that was, if it was actually running, it will have stopped. You can also put your hand on it and make sure it's not vibrating and not in operation. So I've made a decision, it's now safe, the centrifuge is definitely not spinning, and I want to open the lid. With the power off, I can take the key. There will be a little hole in the front of the centrifuge. You insert the key, you turn, and the lid will open. You can then assess now any samples that are in there and decide whether you need to respin them or send them to the laboratory and work out what's wrong with the centrifuge, either take it out of use or bring it back into use depending on why the lid did not work. So there we go. I think we've covered quite a bit today. Like I said, there's lots more information on the folder, the electronic folder that you will have access to, and I hope this video has been of some use to you. Thank you very much.